Alright y'all, if you're like us and you've been using jack stands for all these years because you don't have a ceiling that's tall enough to run a lift, we've been asking ourselves for a couple years now, what's the best thing that we can do, or the best parts that we can do to kind of replace those jack stands and make our life a little easier as we work under the truck. And I think this week we have the answer for that. We have a big project coming up here on the 55 truck that's going to be coming up pretty quickly. Stick around to the end of this video to find out what that's going to be. But for this week, what we're going to do is we're going to build a set of wheel cribs, and let me show you what we've got over here. Like normal, we never do anything the easy way. This set is from Mag's Fab Worx, and it was about $130 cheaper because they were running a sale on their unwelded kits to buy them like this in pieces. And guess what? This is a metal shop, so we put stuff like this together all the time. So I said, why not? Plus it'll make a great video. So let us get started on these, and as we go along here, I'm going to show you a couple reasons why I went with these specifically instead of some other brands, and we'll talk about that a little later on. But you can see here, all of these pieces, they were definitely cut out with like a plasma cutter. There's a little bit of slag on them. So what we're going to do to kind of just neaten these up a little is we're going to take them outside here and we're going to do our grinding, just knock all this slag off and kind of just get them ready to go, because probably these will get powder coated one day or something like that. It's kind of what I have in mind instead of painting them, because I hate painting. But we'll get them assembled first and then figure that out a little later on. So let's take these out here, grab our grinder, get to work. Got all those ground, and now we're ready to start our assembly process. I will say, like, that slag wasn't bad or anything. We're just kind of trying to be overly particular with these so that if you grab them or something like that, somebody grabs a hold of them, you don't kind of get a burr or something. That's the only reason we kind of did that. And again, if we powder coat them in the future, we want all those edges smooth so it sticks well. So that was why we went through that process. But we got everything ground. It looks really good. Now, you guys remember last year, much like these wheel cribs, we also built our own welding table, and that thing's going to come massively into play as we go ahead and start setting these up and figuring out the best way to hold them in place so that we can get everything welded. So if you haven't checked out that video, I'll link it here so that you guys can see it if you want to. But again, it's more stuff like this. So we've kind of made up a kind of makeshift jig here with our spacers and stops that we bought. These are strong hand tool spacers, stops, whatever you want to call them. And then we also have our clamps that are made here for our table. We've kind of got them laid around into this general shape that these are going to go into. So now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and get this kind of mocked up a little bit. Now with this mocked up, what the plan is for us, we're going to try and make this joint just like this. So it'll lay in here, make good penetration between both pieces, and make this very, very strong. We want to, of course, make sure that these are as strong as we can make them. Let's talk through a few of the features with these. So this thing is 12 inches off of the ground. So from ground to the very bottom of this wheel crib is going to be 12 inches. So the tire will set into this crib, which is going to give us a ton of clearance as we go forward. And the other thing that's cool is I got this set of 4 that are this width. I think that's 9 inches if I remember right. They're 9 inches wide. They also make some that are 14 inches wide for slicks. So I bought this set so we can use with anything else. And then as we go along, I'll buy 2 for the slicks on the back of this thing. We can use 2 of these for the front of the 55 and then 2 of the wide ones for the rear. So that's the other reason that I did this the way that I did, so that we can have future state, we can use these even for the 55. This is Dad's Eastside MIG Master 250 MIG welder that he's had for a long time now. And so I wanted him to talk you through, what's the thickness of those, that material? 1/8. Okay, so that's made out of 1/8 material over there. I want him to talk you through what he does to kind of set how he wants to set the welder for this and what he's going to do, wire size and stuff like that. So here he is.
Oh, I've used this welder for a lot of years, and I've got pretty familiar with where these settings are supposed to be. This is 1/8 material, so I will set the welder up where I've got it on. It's in low range. It's up to number 6 on the adjustment, on the fine adjustment, and then the wire speed I set it at about 3.5 on stuff like this. We'll probably have to work with this a little bit. This works real well up to about 1/4 inch thick. It's 0.35 diameter wire, so we probably will have to fine tune this just a little bit for this 1/8 material. But this is going to be pretty close to where we need to set it. You can weld, and what really made me like this machine is I run some 023 wire with it for welding sheet metal, and it really, a lot of welders that I've tried, when you start turning them down so they will be real good with 023 wire, they get to spluttering and splattering, and they don't run real smooth at a low setting. This welder is excellent. So when I go down to an 023, of course I'll change all the settings on it to weld sheet metal, but it welds sheet metal just about as good, probably as good as thicker material. So we're gonna go ahead and mock this up. You saw us mock up this whole assembly earlier, but we decided to do it one piece at a time. And we've got our stops here, so it's held there. We got a parallel right here to make sure that corner is good and square. And then I'm gonna get a set of gloves and hold this so Dad can do a corner weld here on those 2 plates together, so that we get that good strong assembly like we talked about. And we'll tack this all the way around in all 4 corners, and then make sure everything's how we want it, and then we can do our final welding. Alright, so you can see what we got our tacks here in all 4 corners. Then what we did to make sure that we were at least pretty close, we took and measured the diagonal here. It's going to be hard to do with one hand, but this is basically 14.25 diagonally, and then diagonally this way, holding it on the 1 inch mark, by the way. And it ends up being about 14 and maybe 5/16, so it's about a 16th or so out of square. But if we take our top plate here, you see this laps up here on the top. So I think what we'll do here is you can run a weld here on each one of those, and then we'll flip it over and run some welds on the inside corners for these. That should make that pretty darn strong. So that's what we'll do here for the top plate. Quicker now, right? One thing that I love about our welding table is it's not such a big deal with something like this where you got a lot, but when we ground it, we can ground off of our table. And man, this just makes it so much easier. Slap your ground on here, make sure you got good contact on the table, and this whole thing is grounded, and it makes just welding so much more convenient because you don't have to deal with the ground every time you rotate it like he's doing right there. You don't have to reposition it.
The other thing these come with is this flat stock bar here that goes in the center to support this. It also has another feature that we'll talk about at the end here on one of the reasons why I went with these actually. But we're going to turn this thing vertical. I think they show theirs being horizontal. But we're going to turn it vertical so that we can weld on both sides of that flat, and should make it a little stronger. But because if we lay it down horizontally, we can only really get to the top, to the bottom part of it. This way we'll get to both sides. So that's what we're doing. We got this leveled, we got it straight, and we've got it pretty close to the center of that X there, and that's where we want it. Alright, there is one done all the way, completely welded. You can see our center support bar in there. Everything is looking really great on this. These turned out super well. This thing's really hot, so I'm not going to touch it, but it turned out pretty darn level. There's a little bit of movement to it, but not bad at all. Way close enough for what we're doing with it. I will take this out here and knock these corners off of these, just to keep them rounded. Not that I think they'll hurt anything, but just to keep everything rounded, keep everything from not being so sharp. So we'll do that. Now we're going to go ahead and do the other 3 of these. We'll save you a little time here. We'll make it pretty fast because you guys have already seen exactly what we're going to do one time. Gonna take a quick break here and remind you guys about the Shift Point store. Head on over to the link here and check out all of the different stickers, t-shirts, the different logos that we've come up with, whether it's our own logos with the Linco, Shift Point's Linco, or the classic kind of drag racing ones that I've done, inspired by Grumpy Jenkins, Ryder Morrison, and Sox and Martin. Because who doesn't love gear jamming pro stocks from the 70s? So make sure to head over there, check it out, buy a sticker, because that's the easiest way to support us, and every penny of it goes back into this shop and back into these projects that we do here. So if you do that, we appreciate you so much. I told you I'm going to take here on our edges and just round these off, and just also knock this little bit of slag that's on top of this off. Kind of clean this up, should look pretty nice. Alright, we thought this would probably happen during this video, but we're going to show you guys how to do a changeover of wire. So we actually ran out of wire here on the welder, on our MIG welder. There is literally no telling how old that spool of wire is. I was hoping maybe there was a date on it or something, but I don't see anything. But it's been on there for, he's used this off and on for a very long time. So we got the new spool here.
Wire feeds off the bottom. There's a pin right here that goes on a brake. It's on that spool. That keeps it from, when you stop it, it don't let it backlash. It just keeps a little load on it. And you need to get that pin in that boss on the spool.
So when we went to put our spool on here, we noticed that apparently the old one was like this too. This spool can actually come out and get just on the very tip of that finger that you saw back here, and it would actually let this rock a lot more than we wanted. But for today, so we can finish up these stands, we took some, what was that, 1/4 inch thick aluminum,
yeah.
And we just have it in here between this nut and the spool to keep that spool pushed back in there. It's a little crude, but we're gonna just run it like this for today, and then we'll come back at a later date and kind of fix a spacer there to keep that pushed up against it. Then you feed your wire in here, into that right there, and you can see, if we zoom in here, there's a roller there that has the diameter of the wire that you want in it, and then that pushes down and locks in place there, and that is where the wire is driven. That motor right there drives the wire out of the gun and lets you do your welding. Now, if we were doing a full wire changeover, that roller would come out, and we have another pack of rollers down here. That's for like the 023 or 045, and then that roller would come out as well. So you'd have to replace that roller and then do all this same process. But in general, this is a wire changeover for our MIG welder. So while Dad's welding, you can see what that's doing in here. Now, at the beginning of the video, I told you guys I'd talk you through the pros and cons and why I went with what I did. So, a wheel crib, they make different brands of them. The biggest one that I see all the time now are race ramps. So race ramps are kind of made out of like a high density, kind of a foam-like material, so it makes them really light. One of them is about 7 pounds, and I wanted to do a direct comparison here with these. These guys weigh just over 15 pounds, so it's right at double the weight of a race ramp. But I want to talk you through the pros that go along with these as well, because for me that's the only drawback, is they're a little heavier. But if you compare this to a jack stand, I would say it's still much lighter than a jack stand most of the time. I've got one over here, I can weigh it. So the jack stand is 16 pounds, so we saved a pound over a jack stand, so just for comparison. So yes, the race ramps are right at 7, which is about half the weight of these, but now the other part of that is, I'll show you. Now if you look at these, you can assume that the footprint slightly higher, is slightly more on these than on a race ramp because they're square. So it's probably a similar footprint, and you guys know how little space that we have here in the shop. We just continue to pile stuff in here constantly, so we're trying to figure out ways to save space. And you can see here with these, the race ramps are completely solid, so you have to either stack them up in 2 sections or stack them up 4 high or whatever to try and get them to where they don't take up this much floor space. But with these, so you can see we've got it 4 high here. Those separator bars that we put in there are what these are resting on. So we save a good amount of footprint here. And the big kicker is a set of race ramps is about $450 to get 4 of them, where we have $250 in this set right here. That's with shipping and everything to get them here. So it's basically half price. Now we welded them up. Now they have the option to get these welded straight from them, so you can do that. Shipping's a little bit more, I believe, just because of the size, but you still come out, I think it's $100 or $140 less for a set of these already welded than if you bought a set of the race ramps. So the con is a little bit heavier, about twice as heavy, just flat out about twice as heavy, but you save so much on full floor space, your footprint here, and you'll save money. You know, that's why we went with these, and we saved even more money because we went and welded them up ourselves. We saved money up front, we still had to do the time and the materials to actually weld them up. So it's probably about a wash, to be honest, but you guys got to watch us do it, so that made it worth it, right? Now we had to add a couple blocks of wood on our jack to get it up high enough. Got this thing sitting up here on them. They look really good, and they haven't fell yet, so I guess they're gonna hold up pretty well. We did have to add, like I said there a minute ago, some 1-bys onto our jack to get it up high enough, front and rear. But you can see how well these things sit in here and how much space it opens up under here, especially in the rear, because that's why we needed these things. So I told you guys at the beginning of the video, we've worked with jack stands for all these years, but right now was the perfect time to get these wheel cribs. And the reason is because we are fortunate enough to be working with QA1 coming up here on this truck. As you guys know, we're taking this thing in Sick Smokies in October, and instead of, you know, like dialing it in and testing it how we are, let's just completely tear it down and start from scratch. So in the rear, we're going to be getting a 4-link to put in the back of this truck. So we're going to strip out all of the leaf springs, all of the shock mounts, everything that's back there. That thing's going to a bare rear end, and we're going to build we're going to use QA1's triangulated 4-link and double adjustable shocks. We are super excited about this. Those double adjustable coilovers and getting the back side of this truck lowered just that little bit more is going to help the looks a ton, but this 4-link is going to be so ridiculously functional. I've told you guys before, if you followed us for a little while, this truck kind of rides like a sled. And if you go back there and look in the back part of the truck, the rear springs are completely flat, if not just a little bit anti-arched, if you want to call it that. So they have absolutely no arch in them at all. And so that makes the rear end ride extremely rough. We were worried about those leaf springs because they're really narrow. Those are the original, like those are like basically stock style springs that are back there. So we were concerned about those and the longevity of those and the potential for wheel hop, which is why we put the slapper bars on it originally. But then this opportunity came up and it worked out, and it's going to work out really well. It's going to help the truck when we take it on Sick Smokies. It's going to help the overall ride all the time, and it's going to, like I said, it's going to be very functional. We're going to be able to dial it in, and if we ever decide to do other things with this truck other than just drag racing, it's still going to be extremely functional. That's what's really cool about this, is that we can pretty much make this thing into an all-purpose truck, which is kind of in my head where I've always wanted this truck to go in the long run, is to be able to do different stuff with it and make it kind of this all-around, all-purpose truck, whether it was autocross or drag racing or, you know, cruising like we're going to during Sick Smokies as well. I think that this truck has the potential to be really cool for that, and that's why we needed these wheel cribs. We needed all that extra space under this truck so we can work on it and we can take our measurements and do all of that. So if that's interesting to you, make sure to hit that subscribe button, follow along with us, and you'll see us building things like this, because for some reason, even though it probably costs us more money in the long run, we pretty much always get the kits and we always put them together and we weld them and we do all of that stuff. But we like to do it our way, and that's kind of what we do here at Shift Points every week. So make sure to hit that subscribe button and follow along with us on social media. If you've been following along on Instagram and Facebook before now, you'd have probably heard us drop a hint about this 4-link before then. So if you follow us there, there's usually little teasers as we lead up to these full-length videos here on YouTube. So you don't want to miss out on any of that. Stay with us, and we appreciate you guys so much. We'll see you next week.